My job this morning is to introduce our president and CEO, Elizabeth Cousens. Now, for those of you who haven't had a chance yet to meet Elizabeth, Elizabeth is a true intellectual powerhouse. She is a leader of institutions, and she is an advocate at the US and global level. And frankly, that's why it was so wise of the UN Foundation Board to make the decision last fall to make Elizabeth our third president and CEO. This is a wonderful news for the organization. Now, before she was our deputy CEO, and she's been our deputy CEO for a few years at the UN Foundation, she was a diplomat and a thought leader around the world. She graduated from University of Puget Sound in Washington. She was selected to be a Rhodes Scholar and study in Oxford. She was on the front lines of UN peace processes in South Asia and the Middle East and Europe. She was in senior leadership positions in civil society organizations that had a real impact on global affairs. And then President Obama selected and nominated Elizabeth to be the US ambassador to the UN Economic and Social Council, where she played a vital role in negotiating the Sustainable Development Goals. So when you see the SDGs and you understand their power in terms of governing all of our work, in terms of eliminating global poverty, Elizabeth had a lot to do with the creation of the Sustainable Development Goals and so many other important institutional changes. So she's been our deputy CEO, and now it is my great pleasure, and please join me in welcoming to the stage our president and CEO, Elizabeth Cousens.
So thank you all. It is such a pleasure to see this incredible community of people. I trust you all had a great day yesterday, and I'm just delighted to be kickstarting today with you. And I want to start first by expressing my personal gratitude and appreciation to all of you. You know, some of you are among our longest serving champions, some of you are among our newest, some of you are definitely our youngest. And you have all taken the time and care to be here with us and to make your voices heard. By coming to Washington to meet with your lawmakers and your representatives about the importance of the fight against malaria, the importance of supporting the life-saving work of the UN, the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, and the President's Malaria Initiative, you are showing the kind of personal leadership that we need and that we know has tremendous impact. I also want to thank you all for coming out, especially now amid all the fears that people have about COVID-19. You know, if the novel coronavirus shows us anything, it is how interconnected we all are. You all understand that, how we share our strengths and vulnerabilities, how the health of one is tied to the health of all. And I know you all know that because you spend so much time championing your issues and you're so dedicated to the fight against malaria to help people who are very distant from your daily lives. And it's because of you and the whole community of scientists, health professionals, advocates, community and individual leaders that the fight against malaria has been such a success story of the last generation. You all know the statistics: deaths decreasing by 60%, cases down by 40%, more countries than ever on the path to malaria elimination, and more than 7 million lives saved, thanks to the work of the United Nations and to initiatives like the President's Malaria Initiative and the Global Fund, and thanks to champions like you. This is a heroic and extraordinary achievement, and I know you all know that, but it's important to say again at the outset. But of course, you also know that progress is starting to stagnate, particularly in countries that face the highest burden. And we know that the most vulnerable people are most at risk: the children under 5, pregnant women, people living in extreme poverty, or people who are suffering from disasters, displacement, or other forms of depredation. And we know that a child dies from malaria every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes. I mean, that is just not acceptable, and I know you know that. So all of the progress that we've made against malaria needs to be shored up and fortified, and it shouldn't be vulnerable to reversal. And we need to step up the fight to go the rest of the way so that that 2-minute statistic truly becomes history. Now, your fight against malaria is also part of a bigger fight, because we see exactly that same tension between progress made and progress deferred in so many other places. Hundreds of millions of people who have been lifted out of extreme poverty by gains in the global economy over the last generation, but too many are still vulnerable to slipping back, particularly when they face health crises. Tens of millions of children alive today because of the breathtaking gains in maternal and child health, significantly due to progress against diseases like measles, like polio, TB, and malaria. But look at the renewed risk we're facing with measles or antimicrobial resistance. You know, we all just learned Monday, if some of you heard the news, that researchers may be on the cusp of gene editing that can cure blindness, an extraordinary thing. And yet we face a tide of doubt and misinformation about science that puts a lot of our best aspirations at risk. We've seen substantial gains in education, including increasing equity for girls, but we're also told by recent studies that it will take an average of 99.5 years to reach equality for girls and women everywhere. And that's also not acceptable. Now that's where the Sustainable Development Goals come in. That's the roadmap that every single country signed up to 5 years ago to build a more equitable, peaceful, and prosperous world by 2030 and to leave no one behind on the journey. So this year, 2020, kicks off the 10-year countdown to 2030. This is the start of the so-called decade of action to deliver the SDGs, and that means it's also the start of a huge opportunity for every single one of us to get even more serious about reaching the goals. You know, we've all seen what determined and passionate and strategic effort can make when we put our minds to it. I mean, just think about everything that you've achieved in the malaria fight. You know, over the last year, your advocacy helped secure a $210 million increase, or over 15%, in the US contribution to the Global Fund. That helped the Global Fund meet their replenishment targets last October and will help them save an additional 16 million lives in the next 3 years. Your advocacy for the President's Malaria Initiative is helping them deploy innovations to overcome barriers to progress and to increase testing and treatment. So this year and every year until 2030, we will need that kind of commitment and we will need your kind of drive to get the SDGs done. So finally, this year is a big year for a lot of reasons. I spoke earlier about gender equality. Well, this is the 25th anniversary of the Beijing World Conference on Women, where the world rallied to the idea that women's rights are human rights. Yet there is no country today where girls and women are equal to boys and men in every dimension of their lives. No country where that's true. We shouldn't have to wait 99.5 years for that to change. This is also the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, which, for all its imperfections, has helped underpin a world of global peace and stability that has helped us build the progress that we've made so far. Yet we've seen a resurgence of isolationism and skepticism about international cooperation that is putting global stability and prosperity at risk. Even collective innovations like the Global Fund depend on that bulwark. We shouldn't have to wait a nanosecond to stand up for what that stands for. Now, the UN is far from perfect, but just go back to the charter of the UN. The idea of we the peoples, the idea of the inherent dignity and worth of the human person, and the commitment to promote social progress and larger freedom for all, which has been on the march, even with setbacks for generations. Now, the UN has also been a source of innovative multilateral solutions for decades, from creating peacekeeping to seeding the very idea of the Global Fund, one of whose earliest champions was, of course, Kofi Annan. Now, Kofi Annan was also the Secretary General when the UN Foundation was created almost 21 years ago, and he used to push us to work on what he called problems without passports. Now, that's what I'm determined to do in my time at the UN Foundation, to push us to work on solving some of the biggest collective action challenges of our times in the most innovative of ways, and to work to renew and strengthen support for the United Nations and its values and purposes when we need it the most. And I'm encouraged in that by so much of what I see when I look around me. The millions of young people around the world taking to the streets to fight for a healthier planet and future. The colleagues at the UN who work every single day on tough issues from gender equality to humanitarian access in places like Yemen. and honestly, people like all of you here today who have taken the time away from your families, your jobs, your schools, and lives to meet with policymakers to ensure that children around the world, children you may never meet, will have a chance at a healthy start to their lives. So we have a series at UNF that we started a year or so ago called Protectors of Progress that highlights ordinary people around the world doing extraordinary things to improve the lives of people and planet. Well, that's what you are. And that's what I think we all need to be in following your lead. So I just want to thank you and close with enormous appreciation for everything that you do. Give yourselves a round of applause.